Welcome to the Ask Me How I Know podcast, the only podcast in the multifamily niche replicating what takes place outside the walls of a seminar. This is like the lobby, where honest, unscripted conversations take place and transformation happens. We'll talk about practical problem solving in the multifamily niche, as well as overcoming limiting beliefs. Thank you for joining us today, and now for our featured guest. Struggle to success, and today we have Michelle with us, and she is absolutely fantastic. She's crushing it. You have your hand in so many different realms, and you just excel at every single one of them. I'm blown away every time I see you posting on Facebook. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Enjoying rainy weather in far north Idaho today.
I won't tell you what the weather is here in Tennessee then.
Well, do you see that I'm wearing long sleeves and you're not? So I'm like pretty sure I'm totally jealous right now. Well, Michelle and I were talking, and you know that part of this podcast has to do with mindset and overcoming and being able to work through and leverage whatever life tosses your direction. And Michelle has done an amazing job at taking a really hard is like totally underrating it. So taking some hard knocks in life and turning them into something super powerful for her family. And I'd love to hear for you to share more about that.
Yeah, so specifically the trip that we did.
Yeah, so you took 4 kids?
Well, I only had 3 at the time. Yeah, we ended the trip about 2.5 years ago. So she wasn't born yet. She's 1.5.
Oh, yeah. So she has 3 kids and she takes them across the lower 48. So
and 2 dogs.
We brought our 2 puppies too. Hey kids, I mean, like, who in their right mind, really? I'm sorry. I've been like, hey, kids, let's just pile in the car. Let's be stuck in the car and let's drive across every single state and let's just bond. I love it. But
I heard that from multiple people. Who in their right minds? I was like, I'm not in my right mind. That's why it's perfect.
Right? But this is what I love about it. It was perfect, and it was healing and bonding. And why did you take this crazy awesome road trip with your kids?
Yeah, so I'll give kind of the Cliff Notes version of how that came about. I'm from New Jersey. My older 2 kids were born in New Jersey, and we had moved down here as a family to Tennessee, to West Tennessee. And then 3.5 years after being down here, and I had my 3rd child, unfortunately went through a divorce with their dad. So he made the decision that he was going to move back to New Jersey, and we were going to move out. About 6 months after he left, we were going to move out of the only house that my kids have ever known. My youngest son was born into. So my older kids, when they were babies, they had lived somewhere else. But anyway, it was our family home. It was going to be time to move on. It was a very challenging period. And so I thought, I had about 6 months to plan for this, and was thinking, really, the way it stemmed was from, where do we go next? What are we going to do next? I worked from home, so I could move anywhere, and I didn't know where anywhere was going to be. So it started off at first, I was like, well, let's pick maybe 4 different places that I knew I was interested in possibly moving to. Places I visited before, one of them being Raleigh, North Carolina, and a couple different places, and thought, well, maybe we'll just Airbnb for a couple months and see what it's like in each place. Spend a couple months here, a couple months there. And then it kind of morphed, and I really don't remember how, into this idea of, why don't we just see the whole country? Like, why don't we make this a huge adventure? Why don't we take this really challenging time, and instead of the kids focusing on, we're leaving our house and all of this change, like, let's make it a really big adventure and something we can look forward to. So we spent 6 months planning, and it was just 3 kids, 2 dogs, me, and the SUV. So we did a lot of tent camping.
Okay, what kind of dogs are these?
They were medium size, about 30 pounds. Yeah, 35 pounds. They're not huge, but they're not tiny. So
I'm just picturing you guys getting out at like the gas station or rest areas and like.
Oh yeah, looks like a clown car. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. And plus we had stuff piled to because I had a 7-seater SUV, so the back seat, my son sat in one, and then the rest of it was like all our stuff. And It was interesting. We did a lot of national parks. We did a ton of hiking. I have some amazing photos I kind of have on Facebook from that trip, and it ended up transforming all of us, really. It ended up making me realize what I'm capable of and how much we limit ourselves, because, and so many people at every, telling me so many reasons why this was a horrible idea. And I homeschooled the kids while we were doing the trip. So lots of people have opinions about that. Lots of people had opinions about, well, what if you get a flat tire and, you're not being safe? I'm thinking, well, if I get a flat tire in Tennessee, I mean, it's no different, really, if you think about it. Just be prepared. Be prepared for these kind of scenarios. And we had, from camping, we had every kind of survival tool you can think of in the car. So really, I'm way more prepared than I am in normal life.
Like, we got a zombie apocalypse. We got this covered.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like we were so prepared. So anyway, I kind of took all those things that are everybody else's beliefs of why it wouldn't work, and probably a little bit of my own mixed in there of, can I do this? And is this a good idea? And we just went for it. And it was absolutely life-changing. So I'm hoping to write a book about that one day. And it was a big adventure, big experience in our lives.
Wow. Okay. So when you say, you have said it is life-changing, and I can feel it over here across thousands of miles away. I can feel the life-changing. What would you say is like the most powerful part of that experience?
I would say, I'm reading this book right now called, I think it's The Code of the Magnificent Mind or something like that. Anyway, it talks about kind of breaking traditional rules that we have. And that was a big one, because it was like, why we think of all these reasons why we can't do something, but when you really sit back, it's like, why not? Why can't I just see the whole country? We're in a period of transition. Why can't we make it something great and positive and push my boundaries and, within a safe level.
Right.
But yeah, that really, it made me feel stronger than I've ever felt in my life to be able to do that. And I think the kids too, they felt empowered. They felt, when they did go back to school and got to explain, what we were doing for the last 2 years, it's impressive. I think I'm proud of it. It is something I'm proud of. And it's something that I think the kids will benefit from for the rest of their lives. So yeah, it was a big experience.
Oh yeah. Well, and I hear what you're saying. I mean, those limiting beliefs that we impose upon ourselves, like we put ourselves inside the box. I always tell people I'm always trying to pull myself out of the box. Like, I'm okay. Watched a great TED talk about, the box and the necessity of the box, because without the box, you can't like get out of the box, but, and you have to have some lines in life, some structure, but that concept of like, why do I have to put myself in here? Or I love what you were talking about, how people will put us in a box, and it's like, no, stop, I'm not going in the box that you're going to put me in.
Right.
How has that? Yeah.
And a lot of that was like, oh, you're going to do this by yourself. Like no man with you. And it's like, no, what do I need a man for? I'm not going to some, crazy. We're in the USA. We're in the USA. Where am I going to go in the USA that I can't bring my children? It's okay. And I didn't go to any crazy wild places. We were on main highways going to national parks. There were rangers. What do I need a man there for, to be honest,
Right. Well, and that, that, like you said, that is very empowering. How has that translated over? How have you seen that cross over as, you continue to crush it in the multifamily world, and you're starting all sorts of meetups and different groups and mastermind groups? Right. And how are you seeing the results of that trip just trickling into your life?
Yeah, well, I think once you feel empowered, and once you do realize you can just, when you feel yourself having an urge to do something or a passion towards something, really question why not. More so like, why should I do? If you already know that that's something you're passionate about and you want to try, think about your why nots, all these reasons you're going to come up with, and really break them down. Are they logical, or is this fear-based? Are they logical, or is somebody else saying, kind of getting in your head about it? And just go for it. Have a plan for if things go south. If things went south, we could have stopped the trip. Easy as that, right? You don't need to think of all of these things ahead of time. Just be adaptable. Take one step at a time. Take calculated risks. I'm not saying just like throw your life away, all that structure. Like you said, you do need some lines. You got to create a box, but it should be your box. It should be a box you're happy with. And you should be willing to push those limits and expand your box constantly. So feeling empowered like that and realizing, hey, one, I don't need anybody else. There's nothing wrong with companionship, and relationships are a wonderful thing, but you don't need that. You don't need validation from somebody else. You don't need somebody else on your journey. You can just create your own journey. So that's been very transformative for me. And kind of being a leader in a little bit of a leadership role. I know it was just my family for that trip I was leading, but you have to take charge. You have to learn how to implement your plans. And there was a lot of ways that it translated for me, and just expanded my mind of what can I do? What can't I do really is kind of how it started. It made that shift,
That's really interesting, because that is a shift that I think a lot of entrepreneurs end up making. Is once you take those initial steps and you get past it, then you're like, wait, what? I can do this and I can do that. Like exactly like you're saying, like, what can't I do? That's a word that can't is one of the words that I'm like, that's a 4-letter word. I'd rather hear some other I don't want to hear any 4-letter words really, but I mean, like, out of my kids' mouths, that's like the worst thing I could possibly hear. Like, don't even do that to yourself, because it just automatically cripples and debilitates.
Yeah. And when you remove that word too, because you shouldn't do everything, right? And you're going to have a lot of ideas that pop up, and especially entrepreneur personalities. We have a new idea all the time, multiple times a day, right? If most people I know. So you shouldn't do everything, but at least you have that choice. There is nothing you can't do. There are things you will choose not to do. That's your conscious choice. And make sure you break that down and figure out which one it is. Are you doing it because you don't think you can, or are you doing it because it's not right for you? Big difference.
And I'll even add to that. Are you doing or not doing something because other people are placing expectations on you? It sounds like you did a lot of, the removal of other people's expectations. Can we call that like OPE?
There you go.
OPE here, please.
Yep. A lot of smiling and nodding. Like, I hear you. It's not your life, so you don't have to do it. They're like, that's crazy. Well, then you'll probably never do it. That's fine. I'm still going to go.
And those naysayers are usually the ones that aren't living the life of their dreams. And, those of us who want to live the life of our dreams have to, take control and say, okay, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go home. Okay.
I know. And we only saw one national park. Oh man, I really wish I hadn't gone to Washington State and seen this beautiful rainforest, right?
That was exactly. Like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So how is this, when you think about these experiences and, some of the things that you have overcome, and you think about what you've overcome in the multifamily investing world, what are some of those, what's your number one, like, oh my gosh, Julie, I can't even believe this thing should have just gone to pieces, and I know my experience helped me keep it together?
Well, I'm still pretty new to multifamily. I just started exploring this space really about a year ago. And there's been a lot of eye-opening moments. I'm still learning. I'm trying to choose my words wisely. Going with, especially because it's a relationship business, right? Pretty much above anything else, because no one person is going to take down large multifamily on their own. No. I mean, I suppose you could, but most people aren't going to.
And all of our paths continually cross. So
Exactly. So it's all about those relationships, maintaining healthy relationships, but also I've learned, and this applies to every area of my life, maintaining really healthy boundaries also. So, you're going to have a lot of partnership teams that maybe you think are going to go one way and they really don't, or, and you put a lot of time and effort into one thing and then you realize it's like the hardest question in life, right? Like, when do you try harder and when do you realize you need to just take a 180, So lots of those moments in this space, and, where we're at in the market is tough. Tons of competition and all of that. So it's been a big learning experience, but like anything else, any other business, any other type of investing, you just have to be persistent. You have to be willing to adapt. You got to be willing to take a step outside of yourself and outside of the situation and really kind of assess and not get wrapped up in, again, I'm going to choose my words wisely because I don't want to say like there are people not doing this. But yeah, not get wrapped up in the emotions and make calculated strategic decisions. I guess is the
You know,
best way
I
to
like
say that.
saying it because it's really honestly, ask me how I know. We just kind of put it out there, and I'll just say, you know, I mean, some people put their egos first. Some people put their emotions first. Some people, they're more concerned about how many doors or units they have instead of what, you know, I mean, everybody has a different value system, and
Mhm.
some of those value systems aren't going to pan out very well in the long run.
Exactly. Yeah. So just be smart about it and think about worst case scenarios. You know, I think any successful entrepreneur you can't live in a fear based, like, oh, what if this happens? What if that happens? But you still have to ask the question, what if this happens? And so you can have a game plan ready and make sure you're being conservative in those decisions.
Yeah, how is this going to affect my investors? How is this, I know, you know, especially right now in our market cycle and everything, when I'm thinking about, there's always a time, there's always something that you have to be very careful with. And right now it is just positioning yourself properly and everything. But, you know, once the market tanks, and it's going to, you know, there are always the nuances. They're just changing all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep up with that. Exactly.
Right.
And find the right partners for sure.
Oh.
People, integrity, and that you align, like you said, with your really core values. If those don't line up, nothing else is really going to matter. So you can still be professional and all of that. But yeah, partnerships has been the toughest part. I got spoiled with my first partner, with my first company. We've been working together for 12 years, and her and I have like never had an argument. We just get each other. So coming into a new space with tons of I know, it's crazy. I got so spoiled.
That is so
partnerships are easy. Yeah, no, it's a little trickier than that.
What are some elements with partner, like finding the right partners and things like that in multifamily? What are some of those challenges that you've overcome, or how have you graciously said, not this one, or?
Yeah, and I think, and it's not, again, like, I choose my words wisely because I have nothing against anybody, right? But I think you just have to be honest when the synergy isn't there, and you have different strategies and different comfort levels with different things. It's okay to acknowledge that, you know, and not hold each other back. If they want to go in one direction, you want to go in another, that's fine. Wish each other luck, and I still help out whenever you can and all that. Just be professional. I guess it's just, you know, but you have to be willing to admit that.
Yes. I actually had a partnership where I just kind of had to, you know, just graciously bow out. But it's nice because, you know, we end up seeing each other in real life, and it's fine, and have lunch, and it's great. And, you know, I mean, there's always a nice way about going about things, you know.
Yeah, it's just business.
It is, and it doesn't have to be a negative experience. It can always work out well for everybody. So.
Yeah, for any relationship, right? Like you can be amicable or you can not. And I always choose to be amicable. I like everybody, you know, but I don't want to work with everybody, honestly, but I like everybody and I respect them and their time. And yeah.
So you have forged yourself a nice path over the last, you know, the short period of time that you said that you've been in multifamily. And what would you say has helped you, you know, how have you forged that path? You're involved in, you know, a lot of groups, especially for women. So I love that because I'm part of the Facebook group that you help organize, and I absolutely love the community there. Was there a reason why you went that direction? And what was I going to ask you? Well, let's start there, you know?
Yeah. It wasn't a preconceived idea. It wasn't like hey, I'm going to get into multifamily, and when I do, I'm going to blaze a trail with a woman, you know, like a woman's group. It was one of those things that just kind of happened. So when I hope you can't hear this lawnmower right outside my window.
I can't hear it at all.
Okay, perfect. It's distracting me. So if you see me anyway, so when you're starting to network and you're in that sponge stage for a while, I still am I'm always in the sponge stage, but especially in the beginning, you're just trying to get to meet as many people as you can. You're trying to hear as many people's stories and just network your butt off right in the beginning. And so I was doing that, and I was joining some groups, and I just realized, well, it's pretty obvious there's a very heavy ratio of men to women in the space, right? On the men's side. Yeah. So it's like, man, it's always nice when women can collaborate and get together, because it is a different experience. We just are, and especially when you're a mom, and it's just different. So I love hearing from other women who are making it happen and what their experiences have been. So Candace was the very first meetup I ever went to. Candace Pilgrim, she's one of the co-founders of the women's group. I went to my very first meetup in, I think it was May or June of last year, and she was the only other woman there. And we happened to sit next to each other, and we just hit it off right away. So I stayed in touch with her, and we were just talking about it one day, a couple months later. Like, I looked all over for where like multifamily specific women's groups. And she said, I said the same thing. And she had just come from a boot camp where other women were saying the same thing. And I was like, well, if we can't find one, maybe there are others, but if there are, they're hard to find. So why don't we just start one? And she was like, all right, well, I was talking to Sarmiento about this at the boot camp. Why don't we get her on a call? And literally within 3 hours, we had the whole Facebook page up. We had our mission statement. Like, it was one of those things where it just came together. Right. Yeah. And everything, that night we had our logo done, and it was like one of those, this is meant to be we had so much synergy, and we just ran with it, and we didn't question it. We just said, yeah, this could be a good thing. So we did it.
Well, that's interesting, because I can hear like your past experience even coming out with that. It's like, just run with it, take the risk. It's really not a huge risk, but these are risks. So I love that.
You're making yourself vulnerable, right? So it's another one of those moments of, why not? What is going to happen? We start a page, nobody likes it. We end up shutting down the page. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Right.
And then you think about what could happen in the other direction. We've had maybe 3 or 4, we have women from all over the country and Canada and Australia in our group. I've met so many amazing people like you in that group. And you start to think about all those things. Now we're doing our first in-person retreat down in Cabo, where it's going to be just, the guest list for that is mind-boggling. And it's like, this is the direction it could go. And which one, that little risk of, well, maybe people won't like me, or they won't like our group, and they'll say we stink and we shut it down. The benefits so far outweigh. Yeah. Oh, well. That's not going to bother me any, to be honest.
Okay. No big deal. But on the other hand, when you're willing to take that risk, and you're right, that level of vulnerability that it produces is significant, but it's so worth it. I appreciate it. It's so fun to be able to have that place. Now, you don't know this, but I have three brothers. I'm the only girl, and I was always involved in male-dominated sports and things like that. Extreme sports. That was the cool,
yeah,
the only girl out there snowboarding when it first came about. I'm totally dating myself. I love to. When I first started rock climbing and things like that, it was rare to see another girl. So, it's coming into the multifamily realm. It was the same thing. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Kind of like you're alluding to, I don't care if there are men here or not here, and it doesn't have to be all women or not. It's not about that, but there's something so fun. The first time I heard a woman on a podcast talking about multifamily, I flipped my lid. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally hearing a woman talk about it.
Absolutely not anti-men in any way, shape, or form. We have men on as our speakers, but it's just a different perspective and a different type of energy. And I think, men have groups where it's just men, and it's men with masterminding with men, and we have groups where it's just women. I don't think there's anything negative about that, and just so many positives to it. So I'm really, really happy with how that all progressed, and really excited for who, the co-founders are and how close we've grown. And it's been a really great thing. And that's the name of the group is Multifamily Women's Mastermind on Facebook, if anybody's curious about that.
And we'll have down below in the show notes, wherever you're listening or watching, there will be all the clickables. So you don't have to try to write anything down. You just click and it'll pop you on over so you can check it out for yourself, because that's really important. So, wow. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share? Inspire, encourage, mindset. A lot of our conversation really is focused on mindset, but I think you and I share the same belief of how powerful our minds are and the importance of keeping the mind in check in order to make dreams come true.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's multifamily or not, or any business, to be successful, there are some key, you have to become a certain person, right? So I think a lot of people, when they go for success, they think about, well, what's the best, they're thinking about all of the business side. What's the best marketing channel? What's the best way to, whatever. I want this blueprint, this roadmap. And maybe they sign up for coaching programs and they do this and they do that, and they're still not hitting that level. And it's like, well, why? You have to become somebody who's ready for that, if that makes sense, and it's about who you become in that journey so much more than which business path you chose. Because like you and I, we both have multiple business paths and different things we've done in our career, but those core, like you said, the mindset stuff, the integrity, your core values, those travel with you in every aspect of your life. So I know sometimes people are like, oh, mindset, and they kind of like brush it off. And it's like, no, but this is like the most important thing, especially as women who we will get, people will look at us a little bit more as, can you do that? Are you sure? Oh, you're a single mom of 4. Like, how are you going to have time? How are you going to, it's like, don't worry, you worry about you.
Exactly. I got myself covered. Don't you worry.
Yeah. And don't cloud my head with that, because, you have to have that persistence, that like really thick skin, that, like, I'll give you just an example. I just finished the 75 hard challenge. Have you heard of that?
Oh my goodness gracious. I've heard about this. I'm like, oh, I can't even drink a gallon of water.
Oh, it's a lot. So real quick rundown of this challenge: for 75 straight days, you follow a diet, no cheat meals, you drink a gallon of water a day, you read 10 pages a day, you take a photo, a progress picture, which you don't have to share with anybody. It's just for you to see your progress. And then you do 2 workouts a day, 2 45-minute workouts. One has to be outside, and no alcohol for 75 days. So this is a challenge, and it's a challenge. And I started before Christmas. So I had like the holidays, no wine, New Year's. I know it was a challenge for 75 days. Yeah, and I know a lot of people say
challenge to your challenge. Apparently,
it was a lot. But at the time, I was kind of getting in a little bit of a head funk. And I've heard about this challenge before, but when the timing's not right for you, you're like, yeah, who would want to do that? Like, no, not get, whatever. But then certain things happen where it's like, I wasn't as mentally focused as I knew I needed to be. I wasn't as mentally disciplined. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit to it. And I'm just going to prove to myself I can do it. And those kind of things, when you work on that side of like yourself and you put so much focus, because it's daily focus every day. And can I do this? Am I going to be committed? Can I figure it out? It's middle of winter. Who does that challenge in the middle of winter? So it was hard, but it was one of those things where it's like, who am I becoming by doing this? And when you're thinking about that every day as I'm out walking for 45 minutes in 20 degrees, and really, I mean, it was so empowering. And when you can realize like your mind over matter is not just a cliche phrase, it is so true. And you do little things to keep pushing yourself and your limits and remind yourself of that all the time, it will translate to everything else that you've got going on. And then you can sit and, okay, how can I apply this to getting more acquisitions? Because it's a really hard market. And everybody knows if you're not really pushing, it's a numbers game. You have to look at way more properties right now to find one that's going to make sense. So doing things that will get yourself mentally prepared, physically prepared, even just in the right headspace, you're going to be able to be successful in a way that somebody that's just looking for, well, what's the business blueprint? I can give you a business plan. How many people are going to execute it?
That 2%, 1%, maybe. Yeah. It's interesting, as I always look for physical challenges. The first time I did a road bike, a century on my road bike, that was like, it was a mental challenge. It was, yes, it's a physical endurance, but when you combine something that just is taking you to your limits physically and mentally, you grow exponentially. It's so amazing.
Exactly.
I look for those type of challenges all the time, because it's like, that is a moment that you grow, just like growing muscles. Like, you can't grow muscles unless you're kind of breaking them down a bit. And as a person, and I see that direct correlation all the time. I'm so amazing. I'm not surprised, but I'm just like, oh, dang, girl. Hard 75.
It's hard. They have another phase after it too.
What?
I don't think there's like a phase 2, like you can add to it. And I was like, I think maybe I got to take a little break.
Opt out, I'm just going to not do that. Oh my goodness.
Well, you do it as long as it's serving you, right? Once you feel like you've gotten the benefit, and like I'm at the point where it's like, okay, now how am I going to apply this to everything else? If you just keep doing challenges and challenges, like if you don't then apply it, it's like reading all these business books, right? Like I love reading and listening to podcasts, but if you don't take a step back and then think, how can I apply this? It kind of loses its value.
Yeah, it's kind of like the person that goes to a bunch of seminars and events, but then that's all they do, and they don't actually put any
execute.
Execute, please. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Michelle, I am so glad to just share some time with you and to have this great conversation. Obviously, you and I do care so much about, personal growth and development, because we know it translates into every part of our life and benefits not just our business, but VIPs like our family and our kids and everything. So important. But thank you for all you do to push everything forward, to push the envelope. Because when I see you on Facebook and I'm just like, it's encouraging and it's inspiring. So thank you for being.
Same to you, Julie. Even with this podcast, I mean, that's awesome that you're doing this and you're putting yourself out there, and you're doing a great job. So I can absolutely say the same to you.
Aw, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. My guests are the most humble successes, so be sure to show them your appreciation by rating this episode 5 stars, which sounds silly, but let's be real. Ratings, likes, and shares, they take no time at all, but make all the difference in the world, if only to boost morale. Also, since I don't spend time on the how and why they got into investing, be sure to check out the show notes to get to know more about today's guests, including other podcasts they've been on that has a more traditional format that will give other details about their investment journey. It'll also tell you things like the most influential person in their life and what they're reading right now, as well as how to connect with them. And please, subscribe and rate Ask Me How I Know so it reaches other listeners like you. Until next time, go find your freedom.